Hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast series, The Art of Connected Parenting, where the founders of Sproutable are coming together to talk about the power of up-leveling how we think about and understand our role and relationships with our kids. Just to remind you of who we are, I'm Casey O'Rourke, host of the Joyful Courage podcast, positive discipline lead trainer, mom, adolescent lead here at Sproutable, and with me are Alanna Beebe, our managing director, brilliant, thoughtful mama, and positive discipline parent educator as well, and my friend and colleague, Julietta Skoog, also a mom, the early years lead here, and positive discipline trainer. We are so excited to continue to dig into all the places with all of you. Thank you for being here and listening in. Last episode, we dug into shifting perspective and embracing imperfection, embracing the messiness of this practice. This week, we're talking about getting clear on what is my goal here. So who wants to start us off by giving some context to that question? What is my goal? When would we ask that question? Why would we ask that question?
So I think for me, just to kind of bring us along this process that we've been going through this podcast series, it's like this evolutionary arc, like as we're thinking about how we want to be a parent. First, we have to figure out what our own story is in parenting. Like, how was our childhood? How are we showing up? What are the things that we're bringing with us? What are the things we want to, let go of, all that kind of stuff. And then going through this process that we were talking about in the earlier ones of being like, oh my gosh, what is my fear and shame and guilt? What is that? And then moving beyond that to, oh, this is messy. I can be okay with it. Mm-hmm. And then once we can do that, then we can start saying, oh, it's messy and I can still be intentional. I can still have a goal. Mm-hmm. I can still have this forward thinking idea of where I want to go from here. Because as we talk about in positive discipline, discipline meaning to teach, coming from the Latin root that means to teach. That it is this opportunity to teach something, and we are teachers as parents. Mm-hmm. And so there is a learning, a student opportunity. We get to be a student and a teacher at the same time, and there's this give and take, and that's a beautiful moment. But really, it's about being an intentional teacher as a parent for me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the intention and the goal within, just to add on to that, yes, Alanna, and the idea that there's a lot that we can do that can just stop something, or in the messiness of it, our attempt to control or just like make a behavior stop. And so, but when we go deeper with the intention, when we really think about the bigger goal, the bigger why, like what's our why? What's in it for me? We talk about this a lot in the beginning of the class, like, why are we here? Why did we sign up? That bigger question within it as a parent. Why are we doing this? What's our why?
Why did I have children?
Why did I do this? Right? I mean, really, what is the goal here? What's the intention? And so when we can really step back by embracing, as you said, Alanna, by embracing the messiness, embracing imperfections, dropping out of that shame or guilt, then we can, that's where the fun begins. We can be like, okay, what's our end game here? What's our our long-term intention?
Yeah, I appreciate both of those thoughts, both of those perspectives. When I think about it too, there's something around, for me, I can't control the outcome, right? I can't control how the other person is going to perceive me, but I can be intentional in what I bring to the dynamic. I can be intentional around how my actions create something, a way of being, an energy, a quality inside of the relationship that I have with my kids. So when I think about what is my goal here, I know for me it goes to, like, what do I want to create energetically? What are the qualities I want to animate and bring to life in this interaction with our kiddos? And
And I think there's this, idea, we live in this like positive parenting kind of umbrella, positive parenting, gentle parenting, whatever you want to say, conscious parenting. And I think there's a lot of emphasis on, being kind and being connected and allowing the process to happen. And we just talked about that for a whole episode. And it's not enough. You still have to teach, We can't expect our kids to learn emotional regulation skills by just being like, oh, they're having a tantrum, it's great. I love it. I'm so happy now in the space of tantrum, right? Like that's part of the process, but this is the work, this is the practice, the opportunity, the skill building, and that's is so important.
Yeah, I totally agree. And that's for me in the moment, it's what does this moment need? What is to have that kind of responsive intention, it takes it all into account. Is it the relationship? Is it the energy shift? Is it the really specific teaching, practicing, firmness, follow through? What does it need right now? So that to me is like the goal or the intention isn't necessarily, yes, that outcome, but it's this commitment to just saying all in. What is needed right now?
And I love how that brings in, like, we get to be really intentional with that. And it's a practice, as that word just keeps coming up over and over in all of these conversations. And so I have a story, a recent story of not being intentional and having to do a little cleanup. So as listeners are catching on, I'm the one with the older kids. And my oldest is actually 20. She's not even a teenager anymore. It's so weird. And by the time this comes out, she might be 21, which is really wild. Recently, I found out a little tidbit of information that really freaked me out. She lives on her own. She is making her choices, her life choices, which we want them to do. That's the goal at age 20, right? And I found out about one that I was less than excited about, right? And I thought to myself, okay, I want to have a conversation with her about this. I want to land just like personal values and boundaries and health and well-being. I need to make sure that I'm really regulated and intentional when I talk to her about it. So I did have that thought. And then like less than 24 hours later, I happened to be on the phone with her and I was like, I'm going in. And I didn't do any of the things that I had planned, right? I went in with like, how could you, what were you thinking? A lot of judgment, a lot of judgment, to the point where she was finally like, okay, I gotta go. Like, peace out, pull back, not talking to you about this. You can't handle this. And yeah, so that's an example of going in, and I'll follow up later on how I cleaned that up. But even with the best of intentions, sometimes, you get caught up in the moment and that conditioning, that fear, all the stuff shows up and gets in the way, and you don't actually bring what you want. And what I created, instead of like, critical thinking and thoughtfulness and reflection, I created disconnection. She told me later, she's like, that was hurtful and irritating. So, and that was on me and how I brought that energy into the conversation. So I'm really excited for us to talk more about this, because I think it is so, so, so important for all of our kids that parents be ever more intentional and thoughtful about how we respond.
That's a common human response of just we have the best of intentions and then you get the moment and then it just goes sideways. You can hear the words coming out of your mouth and you're like, that's not what I was going to do.
Stop driving the train over this.
Yeah. Well, and I do think, one of the ways that we anchor the beginning of any conversation with parents is this idea of first listing out the challenges to really highlight what stage and age you're in and to normalize that list of challenges. And then to immediately say, when we imagine them at the age of 25, and you're getting close here.
Creeping up there.
What are those life skills and characteristics and qualities that we hope that our kids will have, not to mold them into this perfect, human being that we really wanted to be and to live out our, lost opportunities through them. But what are those things that we hope that they have in order for them to realize their best self, their true essence that all of us have within that? So in that way, that really is where we say, all right, that's the goal. That's the intention right there, that list.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Talk about your stories. Tell me.
Well, I was thinking in your story, I'm going to lead into mine, but the connection is there's so many things we do every day with our kids constantly that is not intentional.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
We kind of live in that world most of the time because it's honestly, it's exhausting. It's exhausting to just be intentional in every interaction and every moment of the day. None of us can do that. It's impossible.
We're not monks.
We're not robots, okay? So it's about the times when it matters, when it comes up, when you see it. Because there are many things that we do that we probably could watch in a video and go, oh, I could do that differently and, be different. So here's my story. The reason why this is important. So what I probably did for like an entire year or longer, maybe it was Espen's entire life, who knows? And this came up towards the end of kindergarten, was every morning was the rush out the door. Was like, okay, we got to get going. Come on, let's do this, blah, 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 right? And I have all the tools, right? I did the transition tricks. I made it fun. I made it silly. I, did all of these things in connection and fun. And it was exhausting. And every time at the end, it was like this rush to get out the door, We're always running late. So I thought I was doing everything, okay? And then my dad came to visit. And I see my dad doing exactly this inner stress of him being like, we gotta go, come on, Espen, blah, 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 blah. And he's walking to school with me, and I'm like, Dad, this is part of our routine that we have this much time to get to school because Espen likes to pick up sticks and rocks and do this, and we rub Buddha's belly on the way at the neighbor's house, and this is what we do as part of our process. We do not need to rush. We have the time. We created that space for this, And I'm like, my dad, he's learned nothing, nothing. Like, totally judging him. And then my dad leaves, and we go through this process again where we get to this like rush stage, getting to school. And Espen's just like, Mom, it's so stressful when you're like rushing me. And I'm like, well, if you would just like move along, then we wouldn't be rushed and we would just get to school. And I realized finally, right, after a year, I thought I was being intentional. I wasn't, right? And the shift was not the things that I was doing, the like transition tricks or the blah, blah, blah. The intentionality for me was really I needed to let go of the stress of being on time.
Yes.
I just needed to let go of it completely. And once I let go of that, we haven't had a rush. We haven't had a stressful morning. We haven't,
This reminds me of marriage counseling right now.
Yeah, it is. It's all, right? Because it's all about the relationship. So my intentionality in that was not about what I needed to teach Espen.
Yeah.
Right? It was about what I needed to teach myself and like let go of for myself.
Well, and how you wanted to feel.
And how I wanted to feel.
How
exactly.
you wanted to feel.
I didn't want to be stressed out anymore.
Yes.
I was like, why am I doing this to myself?
I really relate. I mean, I used to have this moment where I would open up the door and it was like that feeling of like, oh gosh, to wake her up, here it comes. And I just decided I don't want to feel that way. Yeah. Whatever it takes to get her out of that bunk bed because I can't drag her out.
Which one?
It's going to be
Bye?
Leona.
Yeah,
it's all, my little teacher. But yes, I feel it's that feeling part. That's that intention. It doesn't have to be a life skill, right? As a matter of just intention.
Right. And then there's also life skills for Espen, right?
Yes.
But then as soon as I could get out of that,
Right.
then there wasn't this like disconnect between us anymore. So then the intentionality around like timing and what we need to do and what's coming next, then that teaching happened.
Right.
Because I wasn't getting in the way of it anymore.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And so that's that piece. Like sometimes there's your own work in teaching yourself and being intentional. But also if you aren't fully on board, right, you're still getting in your own way.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I will share mine, which is the story from a few years ago when my two older kids shared the same after school. They went to different schools. Both are neighborhood public schools, but they were at different ones. Each one had a different program. So my kindergartner would take the bus after school to her third grade sister's school where the after school program was. And then we, after work, would go pick them up. And so that was kind of a big thing for a kindergartner to get on the bus, go across the neighborhood, and then go to this school where her big sister has all her friends at this after school care and hang out for a couple hours. So, you know, like with any working parents, like we're juggling a whole lot and just trying to get the systems. And I go and she's in kindergarten, so I also had a baby at home also. So there's just a lot of moving parts. And I get a message from the after school program that says, hey, if you can encourage Vi, the kindergartner, to branch out and make some of her own friends, that would be great. She's just kind of getting in her big sister's way. And I was like, that's an interesting phrase. Tell me more, because that's weird. She's super social. She's got a ton of friends at school. What do you mean? Is she like in the corner? Dig deep, dig deep, dig deeper. Come to find out she's rolling in and the big sister is saying, don't look at me, don't hang out with me and my friends, go find your own friends, go make your own friends. So here's this kid being like, man, I just spent all day at kindergarten and now I gotta like bust into this new after school program too and make my own friends and give my own space. And then I have this after school counselor being like, so if she could just do that,
Well, I'm thinking middle child, watching her middle child.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Middle child. So all the things came up. So definitely did not come in with, you know, a calm, like, what is my goal and intention here? But I had enough practice that it was in the muscle memory to just say, hey, let's get in the ring. Let's figure this out. What's really happening, you know, as a family, put the baby in the middle too. What's going on? And then bring it back to what is our goal here? What is the goal of for our family? And also, I really appreciate you saying like people think it's just kind of being permissive or kind or nice or just be awesome. We weren't also like, I don't know, girls, what do you think? You know, John and I were like, brought the firmness. Hey, what's the plan here? What's the goal? What are you there to learn? So also bringing in that perspective that to say, if Vi was not doing a great job at school either or having a tough time making friends, this could be very well a great opportunity for extra practice. But she's good. That kid is like social but to her fly, you know? She didn't need any more practice. What they needed practice with was their relationship and their loyalty and their friendship and this pattern, which had come up time and time again in our family meetings around the younger one wanting to be friends, wanting to hang out, making bids for connection. And how do you either accept the bid or say, I see you. I see that that's a bid and I'm doing my own thing right now. And how about this later? How about, right?
Give them hope.
Give them hope. So we just really leaned into this idea that this is where you get to practice being sisters. You're not at school all day, actually, like other siblings are.
Yeah.
And I do think, you know, you say I'm the middle child looking into the older one, but I also have a really awesome relationship with my younger sister in the sense that I was a senior when she was a freshman, 3 years apart, just like Joseph and Vi, but opposite, where I was the older with her. So in high school and in college. And the love that we have, you know, today, that bond, I can still feel as if we were in elementary school and seeing each other on campus and running and give each other a really big hug. And I also know that grows, that takes time, that takes opportunity and requires being in the space, just like anyone in any relationship. You got to hang with them, you know?
You gotta put in the time.
You got to put in the time, right? And so, and here they were at different schools. You know, we're all overscheduled. Soccer, there's another baby. I'm like, guess what? This is your time. You get to practice. So that was our sort of real. I brought you right to the end, but we really said this is our goal. And just as a family, we'd had a family charter. We talked about, you know, how do we want to feel at home? And so in order to do that, what are the things that we do for each other? And that was part of it. And so we went back to that charter and said, what's important? So we're going to start practicing.
We're going to come back to the family charter conversation. But I have to say, what you just reminded me of that I forgot about was when Ian and Rowan had the same spread as your two in school. And when Ian was in when he started kindergarten, and when they were at the same elementary school, Rowan would sit by him on the bus. And I just remember as she got older, and she was like, I don't want to sit with him on. And he was fine at school. Like, he was fine. He had his friends. He didn't have any issues. But he was adamant about sitting with Rowan on the bus, which may have had to do with Rowan. It may have had to do just with his draw to, like, Rowan's whole cohort of friends and everything. But the idea that we would say, listen, Ian, you got to give Rowan some space, he would lose his mind. And so in the end, it was like, you know what? You're the big sister, and you get to look out for your little brother, and it's not always going to be like this, and suck it up, Buttercup. We didn't say that, but I forgot all about that, and it was so sweet. It was just so sweet the way that Ian loved and continues to love his big sister.
Yes. Well, and frankly,
and she was kind of like, well, okay. But
when we gave that space, I don't know if this was the case Rowan was so sweet, but it turned out the other side of the story was that Jose was getting this kind of peer pressure from these other kids who were like, that's your baby sister, like, go ditch her, go do da-da-da. So that actually opened up that opportunity to build the skill for Jose to be like, actually, only I get to talk shit about my sister, like, you don't get to talk shit about my sister. Yeah. And to build that assertive and confident skills that really trickled down to that particular relationship, that she really got that lesson early on of, this actually isn't a great relationship or friend for me.
Right, yeah.
And
we
then
actually had that come up recently with Rowan and Ian and a friend of hers. So it never goes, there's the opportunities are always there.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. That was all a side note. Thank you for that. So let's talk a little bit more about intentionality, what it means to you. I feel like there's a space for willingness lives inside of intentionality as well. And I just want to tease that apart. And you can talk about the charter, the family charter.
Sure.
Don't make us all feel bad, those of us that don't have one.
Listen.
A+ student Julietta.
Is it on a flip chart on your wall?
It's laminated, okay? It's laminated.
Gold dust.
Glitter.
There are a lot of piles of dirty laundry around too. It's real messy. But I think the space for intention is, there's, an energy around that, right? There's an energy component. There is also, I think about it in terms of the encouragement lens, where there's so much nonverbal too. Right. Do your eyes light up when they walk in the room? Do you really hold this? How do you hold space for the other humans that you are with? That's what comes up for me.
Trying to figure out a different angle.
Well, even, think about too, like that whole, what it requires to be in the mindset of, what is my goal here?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, the big piece for me is just how fast-paced life is constantly. And we are taught, I think, through society where we live, that quick fixes are a thing, But I just want the quick fix, like the marketing thing, the Instagram, the post, the blah, 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 blah. Here's your fix to the problem you have. Here's the fix to the problem you have.
What's your pain point?
Yeah.
Name your pain point, make you feel a certain
pain point
way.
here's going to fix it, know? Yeah. And
there's a formula.
Right. And this is one of those things that, we sit in the discomfort of that as business owners, just to be honest about. We're not going to fix your problems with your kids. That's not the goal here, right? And I think that we get so stuck in that kind of mentality that we miss this opportunity for the intentionality of the goal setting and the, like the plan of where we want to go, because that's a long-term perspective, and we have to sit in the long-term perspective if we really want to really teach these skills, right? And it's hard to think about how you start at 2 or 3 or 4. That's why we have Julietta to tell us how to scaffold these things. But
Borrow a laminator.
Right. Borrow a laminator. But really, like, if you want to, instill the sense of like responsibility and independence and, family relationships, like sibling love and connection, that's all these little things all along the way. So you keep kind of anchoring back to that. Is like this moment pulling in that or not? But you have to think in the long term, because if you're just looking for the quick fix, then that goal setting isn't going to solve anything for you. That's all going to be just about you. How am I going to get comfortable immediately?
Right. And the quick fix brings me back to the iceberg, right? It's that chipping away at the iceberg. And I tease you about the laminator and I tease you. However, and I want to also share for all of us that don't have a charter laminated on the wall, like that's okay too. But you're something that I love about you is you're like this, and I love it when you tell me about when things go sideways. It makes me so happy. Because so many other pieces are so, like, you're very, not regimented, but super committed to really teaching your kids the skills and really going back and practicing and role playing. And I think we talk about it, but I know that I could have done. I mean, we all have our own style inside of this model, right? So I'm not going to talk shit about myself, I really appreciate that. And it doesn't have to be perfect. It's just like intentionality means like, even just I remember saying this, like, we make it right in our house.
Well, that's what I thank you for saying that, because I think that's where I go with it, is when your intention is this, like, we're going to have healthy relationships.
Yeah.
That's just healthy. We're not going to have perfect, we're just going to have healthy relationships. Yeah. And that requires a whole lot of different things, like communication, respect, and problem solving, and all these things. Responsibility, independence, healthy coping skills, like all of those things. When the intention is there as just a driver, then it's almost like, for me, I notice when it would be easy to not. It would be easy to let it go. It would be easy to slide. It would be easy to, just not this time. And so the commitment, or even I think of it as a little bit of that discipline, or just like that, and maybe some of it comes the follow through. It's just that part where those are almost the moments that register for me. Oh, this matters, because I want to check out right now. I want to just let that go or whatever. And I'm not like,
ooh, I can feel that. Thank you for stating that. Because like, I can feel that, like, I don't want to get up. I don't want to deal with this. And then it's like a weight of, which is why I should.
Right. Or I don't want to, like, we're in the middle of watching a movie and something crunchy comes up, maybe it's something like that reinforces a stereotype, or for anything. And I think to myself, oh, that would be a good moment. But it's kind of, I'm just, enjoying my family. I'm off right now. But I'm like,
just
no.
trying to watch Goonies.
I'm just trying to watch Back to the Future Part 2. And it's like, I do. And then I'm like, oh, see? That's when it would just be easy. Press pause. Hey, what do you notice? And they do a little bit of like, Mom. Yeah. Okay, we notice that's like a stereotypical neighborhood that's like, saying, oh, now that they've gone back, suddenly it's a bad neighborhood, and what that means, and what do you see in the characters? But it's like, you know what? Yeah. Then there's an engagement. There's some energy there. So my point is that it's not easy for me either. There's these moments where I want to just let it go, and I consider them low-hanging fruit in the sense that, oh, that's the message for myself, that this does matter. This is important. So I was cracking up yesterday because we had this play date with a new friend. And so his grandmother was coming to pick him up and asked if he could change in his soccer stuff at our house. So I was showing them through the house. And the grandmother goes, wow, there's a lot of feelings in here. And I'm looking at our list, our like dry erase board of feeling words and Leona's feeling pictures. And Leona goes, oh yeah, well that's because after our family meeting, we just pick a new feeling word that we're going to reflect on for the week. This week it's all about jealousy. And I was looking at the feeling words. It's like resentment, boredom, jealousy, envy, all these like really big things. So from an outside person, maybe it looks like a little odd. But you do. It is those small, those small moments of just chipping away at the week. And I had a couple of weeks ago when we were pulling out the feeling word for the week, and all 3 of my family members have their arms crossed like this. I was like, hey, for the record, the reason that we're doing this is so that we can be in healthy relationships and so that we can have a big range of feelings vocabulary. And so I'm reading the body language in the crowd. I'm not having a great time right now either. And this is my hope for it. I'm not meaning to make everybody feel miserable right now. I'm just trying to build our bank of vocabulary words so that we can be in communication with each other. And John was like, what? I'm on board. He like drops his hands.
I just want you to wear a GoPro all the time. I want you to be a reality show that I can watch.
Well, but you're sweet. I mean, but it's not like it's perfect,
sure.
And I'll say this to parents. I'm like, it's not about going to the craft store and getting the,
it's not about what it looks
the
like.
crafts, open the drawer, take out the scratch piece of paper, get a pen, and sit down and say, hey, let's talk about our after-school routine. Okay, what are all the things that we need to do? And then let it evolve, but just start it. Just get those launched. And so I think that's the intention, like just a guiding intention that is in the water that you swim in.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. It's funny, so of having done much of this imperfectly, of course, with my kids, and now it's just the 3 of us at family meetings, Ben and Ian and I. And so we always are talking about contributions because it's just, chores nobody wants to do chores. And, I long for the days of the chart and the visual. And so I'll say to Ian, like, well, what do you need? And he looks at me and he's like, I need you to just tell me what you want me to do. And I'm like, okay, I can do that. I'm willing to do that, And that means that when I make the request, you get to follow through and do it. Are you okay with that? And he's like, yeah. But it's interesting. It's so easy for things to slide. Like even last night, Ben was like, what happened to the expectation and the routine of helping after dinner? Because these days we're very loose on where we eat and when, and we aren't all together because of activities and things. And so it's become really easy to just eat and go. And Ben and I are left, and it's like, wait a minute. We were a well-oiled machine with the kids for a long time on after dinner routine.
But isn't this a new intention for you in that this is the year where next year he's on his own. And so that's a different intention. It's not hold on.
Sure.
It's like we're practicing how to be on your own.
Yeah.
And deciding where you want to jump in, because maybe you want to put your energy into building other skills instead of doing the dishes after dinner, and that's okay.
Yeah, totally. And I appreciate that we have all these high reps of like, well, what's gonna be useful to you, and what do you need to help you remember, and what kind of tools can you use to make sure you don't miss that appointment with your college counselor or whatever. And even though I can definitely feel like like kind of the eye roll from him, I get to just he knows the routine.
Well, and even just that different intention, just going down the little contributions rabbit hole. We have our little spin the wheel contribution, but our kids now will say, well, what's already been done? Everyone's coming in different times too. What's already been done? Just tell me what to do. And we can say, well, you're practicing the self-direction right now.
Yeah.
You practice look around, see what needs to be done. We trust you.
Yeah. Oh, good tips. Good tips, ladies. Okay, let's take ourselves out of that rabbit hole. Thank you.
I'll climb out. I'm climbing.
Yeah.
I feel very supported. Ian will be so excited for me to come home and be like, oh yeah, I remembered some things and got some help. Okay. Yes to intentionality and having that goal and really thinking about what it is that I want to create and what is it that I want my kids to learn and what are the gaps. So what happens now when we find ourselves parenting in what can feel like a silo, right? When our parenting partners or our parenting village, depending on what our situation is, when the other adults have different goals or just aren't on the same page as far as like there can be intentionality around how we're responding to the kids. Does that come up for you guys and in your classes?
It comes up a lot with the families that I serve, for sure.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, well, and you see this in school with teachers,
Sure.
you see this with other parent friends, you see, we aren't all on the same page. For me, it goes back to that conversation of, the first conversation we had, which is that we do live in a connected community. And it's not our job as me, just as a parent to my child, to teach my child everything. And there's freedom in that. That I get to choose the things I want to lean into, and I really want to teach the values that are important for me and my, in my family. And I get to let go of some things and know that they're going to learn it out there. There's other people to teach and other people to hold that space for them, because we all are connected in that. And that is freeing for me to not feel all of the responsibility to teach everything. It's super freeing. And if you think about that in the long-term way, then it's also helpful, because you're like, I don't also have to teach everything in this all right now, because it's a practice that's going to continue for a lifetime. So this is just what my gift I get to give. And like tying it back to what you two were talking about, I would encourage people to really dig into the things where you want to learn for yourself. Where is it sticky for you? Where is it hard for you? Because that's a place where you can grow and they can grow, and you can teach and learn and like talk about reparenting, right?
Yeah, talk more about this.
Right.
So what do you mean by that?
So for example, let's just go back to my original example with Espen and rushing out the door, right? It was really bothering me because I have this need to be on time, right? I have to show up, I have to be there, blah, 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 blah. I have all this stress around it. But really, I don't want to feel that stress. I actually want to feel good and happy and flowy, and just be able to get there and notice sometimes I'm going to be a little late, and that's okay, and that's all right. So if that is something that's hard for me to work on, how can I offer that opportunity for Espen and yet still be responsible, right? And yet still follow through, still make it to school on time, still, so what does that look like in this way? And how can I teach and learn myself and also feel better, And so does that become a value in my family, right? And we're not going to be stressed about being on time.
Yeah.
And we're also going to follow through, and we're also going to be responsible. It's the tethering between the two.
Yeah, and what happens when, I don't know anything about this, when you're, when there's another adult, it happened with your dad. It was a mirror for you. And imagine, that your dad's here all the time, because we talk to parents, right? And they're like, okay, I love this, I'm into it. And my partner or the nanny or the teacher, the school that my kids go to, because it's a utopian idea to also be like, I don't have to teach them anything because they have all these people in their life. But what about when some of the people in their life, it's like, oh my God, I do not want them to pass on that. How do we let, and even, how do we let that go, one, and also how are we living from a place of encouragement for the other people as well, because we're all on our separate journeys.
Well, and I hear this a lot around, just in two families, families,
Separated.
Which is really hard for families to say, you cannot control what the other what is happening, or you can't control that one teacher that you've gotten that year as much as a parent you want to move them out of the classroom. And so all we can do is really empower our kids with the skills for how to be in relationship with that other person, or how to respond, or how to process that. And I also believe, when, and again, because we work with these early ages, when you can start with these kinds of encouraging language from the get-go around just building up that internal sense of confidence and that sense of self. Then when they are in relationship with another person, and certainly if it's a parent, it's different, it gets trickier, and we won't get, talk about kind of the real extreme, harm situations. That's a different ball of wax for sure. And you want to intervene, and you want to keep them safe, obviously. So, but, in these other ways where you just might feel they're not doing it perfectly, or they're not doing it so, with the in the way that I'm doing it.
I hear they're reactive or they're not listening or
right.
they're quick to punish.
Right.
Want to take things away.
Totally. We have a soccer coach like that right now that's very shaming and pits them against each other. And so I'm feeling that tension too. And so all that I can lean into is my relationship with my kid, just to say how are they able to, and I'll break it down, know that it's them, it's the grown up, it's not them. You know what I mean? Or it's that other person, it's not them. Like, wow, that, like, isn't that so interesting? They're like screaming or whatever, but they're not internalizing that.
Right.
So I think that's the place where as a parent, you can either coach or teach the skills within that. So I really lean into, with my middle around this coach, like that internal voice. What messaging is she getting from a male figure? Right? Who is gonna like hear a voice, and so how can I continue to support the narrative in other ways where she's hearing different messages? Or a teacher that you have for a whole year, just being that soft landing when they come home to be able to process, hold the space, listen to them, letting them vent, offering those curiosity, like, oh, it's not interesting. They like put people's name on the board, or they give you all these stars, or you get to get that thing, or these kids don't get that reward. How do you think those kids feel over time when they like never get the chance to join the class party because they haven't filled the jar? Those kinds of lessons within that, so that, because there's always going to be those people out in the world.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And what's my goal here?
You just be the what is it, the lawnmower, the snowplow parent or whatever. If you just like go in and clear the path and everything's great and green and happy, kids don't get the opportunity to learn, right? So I think it's like this opportunity for that reflection in your own values. You get to go back and go, oh, here's this thing that my kid's coming up against. They're going to keep coming up against these things. So what is it that I feel like I can help and teach them so that they can go out in the world and be ready for that next time? You know, and this idea of assertiveness too that you talk about, like how can they handle their own problems?
That's right. Yes.
You know, and they can.
Right, and coaching them, giving them the language so that the next time that happens, how to respond when you're at the other parent's house and they're yelling at you, how to say, I feel like we're both flooded right now. I'll continue this conversation when we can both be calm. I had a recent family where, you know, even just modeling in front of the child, you know, when there's like a loud from another parent or something that can get scary, just to turn to that child in that moment and just say, that sounds really scary, you know, and I'm here, and you're safe. Acknowledging that, because so much of what we do also is just being like, oh, what do you mean they're fine? Or it's just the teachers, that's not bad. Or like, or ignore, just act like nothing's happening. And the kids, as we say, we're good perceivers and poor interpreters. Like, what the hell, man? You know? So just to acknowledge that, that's not right. Maybe you're not able to tell them what to do, but like, that's not okay.
Well, and I really appreciate what you shared about helping our kids not internalize another grown-up's messaging, poor messaging, unskilled way of being with them. And something that comes up with the parents that I remind the parents that I work with is, you are in charge of your relationship with your child. And, you know, if it's a conversation around the other parent, it's like, that's theirs. Right? They get to decide how they're going to show up, right? Outside of, like you mentioned, the abuse or something that's, you know, obviously we're going to pull out. And I think that, you know, and we're such powerful models, especially if we're parenting partners in the same home. We get to be such powerful models for the other person. And if we can maintain, well, that's the other thing too, like all of these things, and I wrote like 6 pages about this in my journal recently. I'm so solid with this, with my kids, imperfectly solid. And there's this other really important relationship in my life, and I'm realizing like, wow, this is a place where I haven't really intentionally focused that high reps. And so we're getting into some muddy waters because of that. And so that's the other thing too, like it's not even just about parenting, it's how we be with everybody in our lives in a way that like what do we want to create? You know?
Well, and that modeling that you said, I mean, that modeling piece, kids are like, their BS meter is,
Oh, through the roof.
I mean, they are
So fine-tuned.
they're not going to fake like being in a relationship with you. And
Yeah.
so if you're an asshole, you know,
They're like,
they're going to disconnect,
Yeah.
right? And so in that way, if you are in relationship with them, they're going to have that model, that experience that might be different when they go be with another grown-up or another person. They're like, oh, that's different from this. So isn't that right? And there are parts of this I really like. So therefore, that's not as, you know, familiar or doesn't feel as good. And so you're going to, just like we all do, we connect or disconnect with those feelings. And so just having had that stable foundation model for what a healthy, unconditionally loved, safe relationship is going to help inform them of what is not.
yeah. And one of my goals is for my kids to want to hang out with me after they move out.
You're so fun. Of course they will.
I mean, they know. But, well, and back to my story that I started with, so I really kind of stepped in it as I frantically tried to tell Rowan why her choice was not a good one. Realized, you know, went to the gym, moved my body, which was really great. Might have vented a little bit to my trainer, but without the details. And then got home and I was like, okay, I need to clean this up. Like, I was super judgmental. And actually, when I think about the whole story, she had an experience that showed her what her values were and that gave her an opportunity to set a boundary. And now that experience is in her back pocket, which is exactly what I'm constantly like, hey, everybody, like, we need them to have experiences to flex these muscles. We don't get stronger without going to the gym, right? And this experience for her was just another day at the gym. And so I sent her a text and I said, you know, I really screwed up in that conversation this morning. I want to acknowledge that. Here's what I saw, you know, as I reflect on your experience. And this is exactly what I would hope most for you. And I think you're amazing, and it's really hard and weird to be a parent, and I love you. And she responded. She was like, yeah, it was hurtful and annoying, which I got to sit with. I think I talked about this on another episode. I was a little bit ashamed. And then, you know, we moved on, you know, but it was really an awesome opportunity too for me to remember, like, do you guys ever have those moments where you're in the thick of it and then you're like, oh yeah. This is what I tell people.
So much repair. Absolutely. Like, what would I tell someone to do in this moment? Yeah, not what I just did. Yeah. Exactly. But the opportunity for repair is huge.
Right?
Absolutely.
And I got to come back to what do I want to create?
Yeah.
Which is, I want to create connection. What do I want most? I want relationship with my kiddos. I want them to be able to come to me with the weirdest, whateverest things and be able to be like, wow, interesting choice. Tell me more about that, without being like, what in the hell? You know, because I know that experience of being that kid. And it does not draw me closer to wanting to spend time with my parents. And that makes me sad.
Yeah. And because of our experience in our childhood, we have things that we get to teach through our own learning, right?
Yeah.
And that's why I was like getting back to that idea of like what's sticky and hard for you. That's exactly where you have the biggest opportunity to teach and offer learnings because you have that experience to bring forward into it.
Yeah.
Instead of making it the fear-based story,
Yeah.
turning it into the teaching moment, you know?
Yeah. Speaking of fear-based stories, can I tell you a little side story? So I was in Cabo, and my mom, when I got home, my mom was like, I was so worried the entire week that you were gone. I was like, what? She's like, yeah, Mexico scares me. I was uncomfortable and anxious the whole time you were gone. And I told Rowan, and she laughed so hard. She's like, what? Doesn't she have your location? Because I check in on her every once in a while. Anyway.
Parenting never ends.
Parenting never ends. So I'm going to close this up with some deep thoughts. So having a goal or even a parenting plan isn't about things playing out a certain way. It's not about a certain like absolute result or outcome. Instead, it's about what it is you want to create in any given response or experience. What do you think about that? Are we aligned?
I love your question.
And more. Thank you.
Exactly.
Thank you. Thank you. Another awesome conversation for the series. And thank you, everybody who's listening and watching and hanging out with us and following the series. Join us next week as we explore the experience of doing all this work and challenges remain. Dun,
Keep
dun,
coming
dun.
back. What do you do?
Yay. Have a great day. Bye.
Bye.